Beverly Hills Cop 4 is worse than Beverly Hills Cop 3. Like, I mean, I know that that might sound crazy to people, but, you know, because everybody said they didn't like Beverly Hills Cop 3, but I'm about to tell you why I actually think that Beverly Hills Cop 3 is better than Part 4, the last one that just came out. Now, I haven't looked at any reviews. I don't do reviews anymore because I don't watch movies anymore. I actually don't. I've retired for many reasons. Like, but I just felt I should do this because of the very historic place that Beverly Hills Cop holds in fandom. Like, Beverly Hills Cop is one of the best, if not the best. It is the best action comedy ever made. Like, I wouldn't even class Ghostbusters as an action comedy. That's like, is that an action comedy? I mean, maybe it is. So then Ghostbusters is the best action comedy, but Beverly Hills Cop has definitely got its own genre. Like, it's really carved out something new. When I went to watch this, I didn't go to watch it, it was on Netflix. And I'm going to say a lot of things that there are fans who might not agree with me, but this is talkback. And anybody who knows the Merc from days of old, because we've been at this before anybody else was at it, in terms of doing stuff on movies on YouTube. Like, we were the OGs. Just because you don't see us anymore, or you don't see the Merc, you don't see the folks who started this whole situation, you know where you used to go to decades ago for the real deal. So you've come here for the real deal on Beverly Hills Cop. Let me explain to you some things, guys. You see, first point in case is that the reason why Beverly Hills Cop 1 was good is that it was a serious film that had comedy in it. The comedy really just came from Axel Foley. That's where the comedy came from. And he was just making jokes out of very serious situations in a similar way to how he made jokes in 48 Hours out of very serious situations, because 48 Hours was a serious movie with comedy in it. Facts. Now, the first thing that I had an issue with this movie was that it was just an outright comedy. Like, I can't really look at Beverly Hills Cop 4, Axel Foley, and say that it was a serious film. Like, it wasn't. It was just a comedy. There was no point in that film that I felt any sense of real danger. And that was what the first two films had going for them, especially Part 2. Like, Part 2, that was like a Tony Scott movie. Like, that movie was a full-on serious movie. It was a serious film. Like, it was more hard-edged than the first movie was. Part 3 was too far into the comedy realms. And that is what killed that movie, is that it went too far into comedy. It was too much of a jokey, ha, 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 wink, wink, wink. That was the problem with Beverly Hills Cop 3. From its inception, the storyline, all the stuff that was happening in the amusement park, all of that sort of stuff. It was like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. That was the problem with that movie and why that movie didn't work. When you come into this film, I'm looking at it and from the very beginning of this movie, like, everything is a nod to the original film. Like, everything. Forget even Part 2. Literally everything that goes on in this movie is a Easter egg or a nod to Part 1. And I'm watching this and thinking to myself that, okay, so the guy who used to be his partner, who used to cover for him, is now in charge because Detective or Lieutenant Todd is no longer there. You know, obviously he's passed away. The real actor who played that part has passed away. But the guy who used to be his partner that used to cover for him, he's the guy who covered for him in Part 2, if you remember. I was riding around in the Ferrari, I think in Part 2, when he shouldn't have been, and then he had that accident or whatever happened. So that guy is now in charge, and he shows up at the beginning of the film. And I remember, like, watching that scene and thinking to myself that there is nothing about this interaction that is really funny or worth being in this film, other than the fact that it's cool that he's in it because we watched Part 1. You see what I'm saying? That's the only reason. Whereas, like, you're looking, and listen, let me put this on the table here. Eddie Murphy looks good, man. I cannot understand how this is a 60-plus-year-old guy. This guy is like 65, 63. It's scandalous how he looks. I do not know what this guy is doing. And in fact, that's actually part of what was so frustrating for me, because I'm watching the movie and saying that Eddie Murphy looks in incredible condition. He still has jokes. He still has the vitality. He still has all the things you need to make a great Beverly Hills Cop movie. Like, all the things you need are contained within this guy. Like, you know, when you see somebody and you're like, okay, you're obviously over the hill. Taggart and Rosewood are obviously old now. Like, you look at them and like, these guys are old. Rosewood is still holding up, but Taggart is obviously old, and he was much older than them back in the 80s. In 85, 86, he was older than everybody back then anyway. So he is a good 15, 20 years older than these guys. You know what I'm saying? So it makes sense. Regardless, you see the energy that all of them are bringing to the game. So that's what frustrated me about it, that look, all these guys are game to be involved. They're all still obviously friends. They've got great chemistry. Just give them a good story and a good platform that does justice to what Martin Brest did in the first film and what Tony Scott did in the second film. You know what I'm saying? Like, these were serious cop dramas. You've got to bring some edge to it. Like, otherwise, there's no point. It's not funny anymore. The reason why Axel Foley's comedy hit is because, dude, do you know the situation you're in? That was what you always think. He's in a very crazy situation where you know it's serious, and he tries and cracks a joke within it to lighten the mood, but you know it's a serious scenario. Everybody else around him aren't in on the joke. That's the point of Beverly Hills Cop. They're not in on the joke. In this movie, everybody's in on the joke. Everybody's in on it. So I'm looking at this thing and that, what's the point of this? This might as well just be an SNL sketch. It might as well, because I'm like, if everybody's going to be in on the joke, then it's just a joke. Beverly Hills Cop 2, I think you go back and watch that movie. Just go back and watch that movie. The alphabet crimes and all that stuff that happened in the beginning. Look at the edge in the beginning of Beverly Hills Cop 2. Just the setup for it. And then when they go into the gun club and the bad guy, who was a bad guy in all those 80s movies, if anybody has seen Raw Deal, Johnny from Miami, a.k.a. Annie, they were taking bad guys that were from in those sorts of pictures. So when you have guys like that who are doing hardcore action movies, are getting into movies and doing this sort of stuff, what the hell is going on here? And the craziest part is that if you see the face of the Axel Foley bad guys at the beginning, the guys who were ransacking the office, those guys' faces look like 80s action bad guys. So you've got the materials. What the hell is going on? And again, as I say this is a cornerstone movie. It was in our house on Betamax. I watched Beverly Hills Cop probably 50 times. This is a movie that I know back to front. Like it. So I can talk about this all day. I know Beverly Hills Cop 1 back to front. I watched Beverly Hills Cop 2 multiple times. I didn't actually like Beverly Hills Cop 2 because I thought it was too serious, but it was still good. So I'm watching this movie and I'm like, okay, so it's just a joke. We have this thing. There's a crime that happens at the beginning, or rather an attempt on this woman. I didn't realize that was Axel. Okay, guys, there's spoilers here, but I didn't realize it was Axel Foley's daughter. This lady's, look, anyway, I'll talk about that later. But so you're watching this and you're like, all right, the crime in question here isn't really hitting for me, because if you think of part one, this guy's friend got killed, his friend. So when that happened, they set it up where they were really friends hanging out. And then all of a sudden he gets jumped and they take him out the way they take him out. It hits you. So when you see Axel Foley going to Beverly Hills to find out who took out his friend, it means something. It really means something. It's not a joke. That thing was not a joke to this guy. It meant something. When you and it was amazing, because you saw Detroit, and then you like, this guy from Detroit with this trashy car is now going to Beverly Hills. When that guy goes into Beverly Hills, that place looked like a complete fish out of water. You're ready. You're like excited for it, because you're like, man, this is going to be hilarious. You see what I'm saying? So it meant something. In part two, he now is established as a guy who knows Beverly Hills. So when he goes back to, he's in Detroit again and he's wearing, in part two, they introduce Axel Foley wearing flashy clothes. He's now got more budget from the police department to play with. He's driving a Ferrari. He's doing all of this sort of stuff. And then when he goes to Beverly Hills, he's going there because of his friend, because Bogomil, who he'd made friends with in the first movie, is now in trouble, where they popped him, they shot him and everything. And then he's now going back to find out who tried to take out Bogomil. It means something. And it means something because you've established part one, and the movie has a serious edge to it. Remember when he got there, the scene in the hospital, when he goes there and he sees the Bogomil's daughter and the edge, and also, guys, the movie was a serious movie. If you pressed pause on your Betamax cassette tape then, just press pause. You press pause, then you'd not even know it's a comedy. You'd have no idea it's a comedy. You'd be like, man, this is a serious movie. You could put Arnie in that movie, it would still be the same thing. You could put Kurt Russell in that movie, it'll still be the same thing. You put Stallone, it will still be the same thing. Van Damme, still be the same thing. Michael Biehn, it will still be the same thing. Stacy Keach, it will still be the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Clint Eastwood, it will still be the same thing. You switch any of those guys into the movie at that point in the movie, Al Pacino, De Niro, it would still be the same picture. The movie only changes in part 2 because Axel Foley insists on cracking jokes in situations that is not supposed to be cracking jokes. Cut to Axel Foley, this movie. Axel Foley was cracking jokes from the very second that he got on screen in this film, all the way through the entire film. At no point did it seem that he was in any real danger whatsoever. Like, he was just cruising through the movie. I was like, he just sauntered through the movie. Even when his daughter was in danger, it didn't feel like it was that big a deal. At no point did I think that she was really going to be in trouble. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, at no point. At no point did I feel that this lady was in any danger. And for that reason, the stakes in this thing, I was watching it and thinking, this doesn't even feel like Beverly Hills Cop anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. So the problem that you have now is that established, right? So I've talked about those things. He now goes to Beverly Hills, and Taggart is now the main guy. They're friendly. Okay, cool. I like that. I actually like that. I like that. It makes sense. Taggart should be the main guy, by this point. He was the senior officer. He's now the main guy. Bogomil has obviously passed away. It would have been nice to get a nod to Bogomil, who the actor has actually really passed away, I believe. It would have been nice to get a nod to Bogomil, go to his grave or something. Just give us a nod to him because he was such a big part of the franchise. That would have been nice, but it is what it is. So you go there now, and I'm like, all right, maybe things like the edge is going to be brought up. It really didn't. And you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's like the other actor, who's now the guy. And the issue with that is that I don't so much have a problem with him, his character, as much as trying to figure out how that character is going to play off Axel Foley the way that you can't replace that sort of chemistry. Like the way Rosewood was, especially Rosewood, not even really Taggart, but Rosewood and Axel Foley, that was a really good combination because Rosewood was this guy who just had his own quirks and awkwardness to it. And Judge Reinhold, anybody who grew up in the 80s, Judge Reinhold is not just Beverly Hills Cop. He was a very, very established and popular actor of the 80s. Like, he really was. And in the early 90s as well, he was also there as well. But Judge Reinhold has a lot of movies, Taggart, I don't really, not as much as Rosewood, as Judge Reinhold. He's an official guy who has things. So when he was in the movies, like, he also came with his own history, his own stuff. But I'm watching this and I'm saying that, at the end of the day, Joseph Gordon-Levitt doesn't really have like a body of work of comedy or that sort of character work. So yes, he's done a lot of films, a lot of movies, big, huge, massive films, Inception, all of these sorts of things, right? Dark Knight, anything you want to call it. Not Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, which was not good, but still. The point in case is that he's done a lot. And, but he's not the sort of guy that I would think would be in this sort of character. So that when I was watching it, I was trying to find the humor in it, but there really wasn't any humor in it. So part of me felt that, it would have just been better for him to just have played straight down the line, like just completely straight down the line, and been like the Taggart sort of character and had somebody else in there. But this leads to the other issue with it because, all right, if you're going to be straight down the line, then his daughter needs to have more to her, That performance, guys, I do not know what to say about it. Did not work for me. I don't want to talk negative about anybody, so people can say what they like. But for me, the daughter in this thing, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to say. I do not know what was going on. This thing was like flat as hell, man. Like just toned, just like that. And I was just thinking that, look, as a fan of the franchise, you've got to bring something to this. Like, your Axel Foley's daughter. Like, you've got to bring something to it. Do you know what you guys need to go and watch? You guys need to go and watch the pilot for the Beverly Hills Cop TV show that didn't get made. It didn't get picked up from 2013. It's on YouTube. Go and watch the pilot clips of Axel Foley from that pilot with Brandon T. Jackson. Brandon T. Jackson is what you think Axel Foley's kid would be like. Brandon T. Jackson should have been in this movie. Like, I watched that pilot and I'm like, this is exactly what Axel Foley's son would, his child. Forget whether it's a girl or a boy. I guess that they heard that we must make it a daughter for whatever reason. But his offspring, the offspring of Axel Foley, when I watched the clips from the Beverly Hills Cop TV show, obviously it was TV based. So the way that the script and the acting was done was for procedural TV, because the idea was it was going to be a procedural TV show. But just take his energy and his personality. And Brandon T. Jackson is actually good with comedy. So it's like he understands how to do comedic acting. The way he was is what I'm trying to explain to you here. So if you want to understand what I'm trying to say about this, go and watch how he was and the chemistry between him and Axel Foley in those scenes that they had together. And I'm like, yo, this is exactly what I expect this guy's kid to be like. Like, just like this. So you can actually have something to work with, because I'm like, I can watch a scene with just him and Axel Foley isn't even in it and still feel the essence of that character in this person. This guy's daughter in this film, if you didn't tell me that this is Axel Foley's daughter, I would have no idea. And even after you tell me that it's Axel Foley's daughter, I say, give me the DNA test, because I don't believe it. I was like, what is this? It was boring. I'm just being serious, because I'm like, no, if anything, it shouldn't be boring. Especially when Billy is bringing all the... When Billy came into the thing, it was great. He was great in this. He's always good. Listen, Rosewood was good in part 1, amazing in part 2. Beverly Hills Cop 2 was George Reinhold's movie. Like, he was hilarious in that film because he became Rambo in that movie. Especially that scene with the rocket launcher, which was in the trailer. Do you know how funny a scene has to be where it's in the trailer and when you see it in the film, it's still funny? When you then rewatch it over and over again on clips, it's still funny. That thing when he blew up the truck with the rocket launcher and he was trying to figure out how to use it. And then Tiger said, hey, Billy, listen, that was hilarious. That's what it's supposed to be like. Is there any joke in Axel Foley that you're going to remember? None. Which brings me on to Serge. One of the most memorable single scenes in the history of movies, and I make this as no exaggeration, in the history of comedy movies, one of the most memorable single scenes where an actor just appeared once as a cameo is Serge in Beverly Hills Cop 1. This guy appeared for one scene, and to this day, 40 years later, everybody remembers Serge. In a scrub, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious, Serge. He was so good in that one scene. They brought him back for part 2. And his scene in part 2 was also hilarious. Because Serge had graduated from a guy who was doing art to a guy who was selling weapons. He'd evolved. There is no evolution of Serge in part 4. He wasn't in part 2, which was a mistake. He should have been. In part 4, there is no evolution of Serge. Because that was part 3 when he was selling weapons. He's just like a effeminate gay character in part 4. Like, that's all he is. And over the top. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking that there's no point in bringing this guy back if you're not going to evolve him in a way that is surprising and hilarious in how surprising what he has become is. That would be cool. If Serge had become a police officer from security or was doing something based on him selling weapons in that point, he's now doing something that you would never expect Serge to be doing. Serge doing real estate is expected. Like, there's nothing surprising about that. Serge from part 1 in part 3 now selling weapons is a shock. It's surprising. And he was not over the top. That was actually what was so good about Serge in part 1 and part 3. He just wasn't over the top. It felt like you could actually meet a guy like this. You felt like I could actually meet somebody like this out in any of these scenarios. The guys in Axel Foley, this guy is so over the top. Like, you're just like, you've taken Serge and you've put him on nitrous oxide or something. I don't know what's going on. So it just wasn't funny anymore. It's just not funny. It's just like it's a slapstick version of the character. So what's the point? What's the point? I didn't laugh at anything in that scene. Nothing was funny in that scene. And then he's now go on, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, my goodness, every single thing I'm watching is just an opportunity to have some nostalgia fest and to play the dun 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 dun. Dun. They played that song 5,000 times in the movie. They played that song more in this film than they've played it in any of the other movies combined. They were just playing this thing all the time. And I'm thinking to myself that I didn't come here to do nostalgia. This is like the same thing that they did in Force Awakens. And the same things they did in Ghostbusters Afterlife. Have you guys not seen what they did in... The best reboot thing is Karate Kid. Go and watch what they did in Cobra Kai. That is how you do... It brings things back. Complete evolution. All those characters, they brought them back in a way that you're like, yo, I mean, this is great. They even flipped it where Daniel LaRusso became the bad guy. Daniel LaRusso became the bad... In the Cobra Kai, he actually became the bad guy. Like, it made you rethink everything you saw in the first movie. It made you rethink everything you saw in the first movie. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself that, all right, because in the first season of Karate Kid, you actually think that Johnny Lawrence is the bad guy. That's what you think. You think that Johnny Lawrence is the bad guy. And then you watch Cobra Kai, and then you realize that Daniel LaRusso might actually be the bad guy because you didn't know what Johnny Lawrence was really going through and why he was making the decisions he was making because of John Kreese. John Kreese was the villain. That was a real villain, and we always knew he was a villain, but it was like he'd manipulated Johnny Lawrence. He manipulated it. I didn't like Johnny Lawrence when I was a kid, but then when I watched Cobra Kai, I'm like, this guy isn't so bad. That's how you do it. You've got to do something that inverts your reality of what these characters were if you're going to bring them back after all these years. Now, so I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, look, so this situation we've got here, I'm going to try and enjoy this. Because listen, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. So I'm watching, I'm like, going to try and enjoy it. But then I was like, okay, look, the comedy isn't really getting me. The storyline hasn't done anything new. The scenarios you're putting these characters in are just for purely nostalgia. The daughter of Axel Foley doesn't have the charisma or even any charisma. So therefore, I'm not really enjoying the interaction between him and his daughter. The interaction between him and Billy are minimized because Billy isn't in half the movie. He comes in halfway into the movie, which was a complete mistake because the best interactions in terms of chemistry is with Billy and Axel Foley. And it always has been. Like, it's always, in any of the movies, like that was the funny part because Billy always says yes to Axel Foley. Like, Axel always gets him to do things. So the strip club scene, that's what I'm saying, that the strip club scene in Beverly Hills Cop 1 was iconic. In this movie, they try to replicate every single iconic scene, but they don't make it better. In the first movie, there was a scene where he was hanging out of the truck at the back and the cigarettes were flying out and everything was flying out and he smashed up all those cars with the truck and everything. Iconic action sequence. In this movie, they do it, but there's no soul to it. Like, he's just smashing into things. And there was a scene that really highlights this for me when he smashes into the door of a police car and then Billy or somebody or the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character says to Axel Foley that, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he says, getting back up. And the way he said getting back up was so relaxed. I was like, have you gone back and watched part 1? Look at the edge in that movie during that scene, which is how they opened the movie. They opened it with that scene. Look at the edge, the tension. Like, it's like, I don't understand. It's like, are you not watching your own movies? Like, that was fantastic opening to the movie. So I'm watching some like, this doesn't have any edge to it. There's no threat. The villain, you see, Victor Maitland in part 1, okay, who was played by an iconic villain, bad guy actor, Victor Maitland. That guy was really scary. Victor Maitland was really scary. Just his intensity. You know as well as I do what Kevin Bacon can do. Everybody knows what Kevin Bacon can do. That guy is an elite actor. He's done it all. So if you want to talk about ability, we all know what Kevin Bacon can do. So I'm watching a movie where Kevin Bacon is the villain and you're not utilizing him properly. You can't have a situation where from the very second we see him, we know he's bad. There's no growth with that in the movie. From the very first scene, he's bad. So he was just bad throughout the whole thing. So by the time that they took him out, when they took this guy out, it didn't mean anything. I was just like, oh, okay. Because there was no journey with that. When Victor Maitland got taken out, that was an iconic kill. Iconic. Where you really thought that Axel was he was finished. You thought it was over. I mean, you knew it wasn't over because it's an Eddie Murphy movie, so you know he's got to survive somehow. But that's the beauty of these movies, is that you know they're going to survive, but you're looking at them and you're like, I don't know how this guy's going to get out of this. I really don't know. In this movie, you're just replicating old scenes, but not doing it as well. So then I'm thinking that you should just stay away from this. Like, don't even try, because all you're going to do is make me remember something and then realize this is not as good. Because the strip club scene, for example, like I mentioned, Luis Guzman, who is another fantastic actor, who has been in amazing movies from Carlito's Way all the way up and down. This guy's a fantastic actor, but he has to be cast correctly. He doesn't just do anything. You're casting him in this movie, and I'm watching this scene, and I'm thinking, the nasty girls think I'm a nasty girl. Duh, do you want to plan me? Do you think I'm a nasty girl? With Rosewood and Taggart in the strip club with Axel Foley. That's an iconic scene that we never forget. If you're going to dare set a Beverly Hills Cop scene in a strip club, you better make it be good. It better be good. Because I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, what is this? What is this? That's what I'm thinking. Because I'm just like, what is this about? I don't understand what the point is. Because again, if you take that scene out of the movie, it doesn't matter. And that was what was bothering me about it. I was like, come on, guys, because you're making me remember something. So when they go in there, I'm almost anticipating something that is like what I've seen before. So therefore, you now set yourself up for a very big challenge, because now you've got to measure up to that. So when you don't measure up to that, it actually hits you harder, because you're like, damn, man, what was the point? That's where it just starts hitting you more. That is to say, guys, I was watching this thing, and honestly, I know I've talked a lot about everything. I just wanted to put this out here because it's talkback. I have to be real. I'm looking at this movie, and it's really just shocking to me how all the materials can be in front of you to do something, and this is what you put out. I got to the end of this movie. I didn't even understand part of the plot. I didn't really understand what the whole point was. There's a bad cop, somebody took out another cop, and then this guy's getting payoffs or something. You don't even know what's going on. Like, because it wasn't that, it just wasn't, it was sweet. It was like, okay, so what? It's almost like everything is an excuse to just allow you to have the nostalgia. That's really what was getting me about it. It's like, everything is an excuse just to get you to have the nostalgia, as opposed to the nostalgia fitting into a storyline that you're already engaged in. That's what makes nostalgia cool, is that you're already engaged in a great story, and then you just see something and it reminds you of something you've seen before, but it's just like, oh, that's cool. Now, to my original statement as to why I said that Beverly Hills Cop 3 is better than this, it was new. It was different. It was set in a theme park for most of the movie. It was a crazy idea to do that. I think it's insane that they did that, but it's different. It wasn't like Beverly Hills Cop 2 or 1 at all. So for better or worse, as I sit here right now, I remember more scenes, like when he's doing the dance with the puppets and everything, and then when they have the big speech, and he starts doing the speech praising the guy, and then he starts talking crazy about the guy, then they have a fight and he swings at. I remember those things because they were so funny, and they actually stood out, and it was different. I don't remember anything about this movie, and I just watched it or finished it yesterday. I don't remember anything. So I don't know what you guys are thinking, but for me, as a guy who grew up with these films, this makes me shudder at the fact that anybody's going to even consider thinking about touching Back to the Future or any of those classics. I'm like, stay well away from it, because you guys clearly, I don't know what's going on, but it's weird to me because I'm looking at folks who are like, you were involved in the classics, so like you would know what I'm saying. It's not like everybody who's doing this didn't do the first movie and the second movie. You did. Like I said, part 2 was so good because part 2 wasn't like part 1. It was escalation. It was on a new level. And part 2 looked, I mean, it's Tony Scott, so it's going to look amazing. But it was like, it looked fantastic. Go and watch part 2 now, and then watch this movie. That movie that's from like, what, 1990 or the late 80s? Go and watch that. Go and watch that movie. And then come back and watch this one. How does a movie from that long ago, like 30-something years ago, look that much better than a film that's coming out today? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Like, I really don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. So that's what I think. I wanted to put this out on Talkback because I just had to let that. I know I don't make these reviews anymore. Talkback reviews are always a little bit different, taking it to the next level, the next edge. Guys, look, people talk about Netflix and all this sort of stuff. Look, back when I was younger, because I'm from the Betamax era. back in the days of Betamax and VHS, when VHS came out and everything, there was a thing called straight to video. Straight to video. And whenever a movie went straight to video, you didn't take the movie seriously. And the straight to video movies were usually the part 3, 4, 5, and 6 of a popular series or a popular movie, where the part 2, for example, would go straight to video and nobody would ever know it's happened. Streaming platforms now, like, and this Netflix things, it is like the straight to video of the modern era. Because what I just watched is like the straight to video version that we would get back in the day, where you watch it and it's like, oh, okay, cool, this is entertaining. This film, I'm not saying that the movie is bad. Like, you know, there are bad films. No. That's not what I'm talking about. And as you've noticed, during this whole review, I've never said it was bad. Never said that, because it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's just like, there's a difference between bad and, this is Beverly Hills Cop. You've got Eddie Murphy in excellent shape. It's one thing if Eddie Murphy is over the hill. This guy is not over the hill. So it's like you've got a guy who is the star of this thing, who is in excellent shape. That man I'm looking at, you could pass him up for like 45, 50. You could take 15 years off his age and you'd believe it. The guy I'm looking at. So I'm like, the kinds of things you could pull off here, you could pull off a lot. And he's still mobile. He's not like doddering around and whatever. He's still mobile and everything. I'm like, you could pull off a hell of a lot. And a guy like that, if you told him and he got it into his head that he's now going to do something a little bit more action-packed, he would even slim down more and get into even better shape for the sake of the movie. The kind of guy I'm looking at. So that's where I'm coming from. It's all about the potential of what this could be. The daughter thing, like I said, that was a massive reason why it didn't work for me. Massive. Massive. It's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's in and of itself. Because in all honesty, if you have two people with amazing chemistry and one of them, and they both have charisma, and there's a level of charisma with them, even if everything around them isn't really working as well as it could, you'd still be engaged by what you're seeing just from them interacting, you know? When you don't have that, it actually gets magnified, but if things around them aren't working. And that's what you ended up with here. She would say things in that scene, in that film, and there were scenes where she'd be talking, and I'd be like, yo, man, it feels dead. Like the movie just died. I've never seen her before, so I don't even know who she is. I don't know where she came from. So it's not like I even know, which is why I'm talking like this, because I'm like, I don't even know who this is. So I don't know how she became his daughter in the movie or where that came from. I haven't got a clue. But I'm just talking about what I'm watching as an audience member. Anyway, guys, it's Talk Back. That's all I've got to say is the Merc.